Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. So our special guest today is Larisa Walega. Pronounce it for me again, Larisa.
Larisa Walega.
Walega. It almost sounds like a hip hop song. So Larissa,
Or at least a lake.
I know. So for those of you that don't know, Larissa is Vice President of Marketing for Ziebart International Corporation, where she is responsible for worldwide employee, franchise owner, and consumer brand development. Larissa leads an integrated in-house marketing team that provides leadership and support across the entire Ziebart customer journey. Prior to joining Ziebart, Larissa held account management roles at two of the largest advertising agencies in Detroit. Larissa is a certified franchise executive and was appointed vice chair of the International Franchise Association's Women's Franchise Committee. She also serves on the Auto Care Association's Marketing and Communications Committee. Larissa has been recognized within the franchise community as Entrepreneur Top 50 Franchise CMO Gamechangers and a Top 100 Global Influencers in Franchising. Larissa, thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I'm such a fan.
Very cool. Very cool. We're glad that you listened to the show, and you seem very, very accomplished. Before we get into all of that incredible leadership, can you take us back? What was your childhood like? Did you have anybody that you looked up to? Just give us some background context.
Sure. Well, I'm an only child, so that in itself is something a little bit different. In fact, most of my cousins are actually 10 years older or 10 years younger than me. So it's an interesting family dynamic. I was fortunate, though. I lived in a wonderful neighborhood with great friends, lots of kids my age. So I definitely had connections and never felt alone. And many of those people are still family today. As I grew up, though, something that was a really strong passion for me was the performing arts and dance. My parents introduced me. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to dance at age 3, and I continued on through it till about age, I would say, 27, in multiple different ways. I competed in dance starting in middle school and high school, and then I was on the dance team. I was a captain, yay, at Adrian College, and then I even taught afterwards, after I graduated, and my first marketing role was actually at a performing arts studio too. Once my kids were born, I have twins. They'll be 16 in October. They also danced for just a little bit, and I was teaching while they were doing that too. So definitely through dance, I think is where I kind of learned a lot of my communication skills, definitely learned time management, and just a sense of confidence. That's really where I think confidence started to build. I even taught a little bit of dance when I was an assistant when I was in high school. So there was a little bit of opportunity there from a leadership standpoint. In terms of, I know we've talked a lot about mentorship, and everyone, speaks about that here too. A great influence in mentorship for myself is my father. He is a family physician, just about, I think, ready to retire, not ready to admit it, but definitely ready to retire. But I have this sense of always trying to give, to support, everybody around me that I can. And I definitely got that from him. I can tell you countless stories of, being in the car with him and, an ambulance might have been pulled over on the side of the road, and here we go. He's got to pull over too to make sure that everybody's okay. Or in a car accident, I have a story from, I don't know if you've heard of the Renaissance festivals that kind of happen in different states, but we were really into that, going to that through my childhood. My mom loved going, and we went one year, and they have the jousting match that always happens, right? And the sword actually hit right in the guy's eye.
No.
And of course, what happened? 5 seconds, not athletic dad, sprints over, hurdles over the fence, jumps in, pulls the sword out of the guy's eye, then proceeds to, because they have to keep pressure on the eye. I know, if you're already grossed out, I'm sorry. Try not to be too descriptive. Keeps pressure on the eye, goes with the gentleman to the hospital, and then like about 15, 20, 25 minutes later, and again, this was the 90s, late 80s actually. I'm dating myself, it's fine. So no cell phone. Calls the Renaissance fair and says, I think I'm gonna left my wife and my daughter there, and I took the car keys, so just let him know I'll be back eventually, and all is good. So, but he ended up saving the guy's eye by doing that. I don't know that I didn't go to medicine, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you how he did that, but either way, I just remember things like that. He was always wanting to help and always wanting to serve. That's really the theme here, is that I learned serving people from my dad. And so I still keep that with me and try to build and grow upon that throughout my career and just my own life.
Wow, what an incredible story.
It's unbelievable, but I swear to God it happened.
That's amazing. We know, and you're talking about this leadership, mentorship thing. He was both, but he did it just by being him, right? By being, having this servant attitude, jumping in where he was needed. And as a young woman, you got to observe your dad being the leader, being a mentor, being this individual that stepped up when it counted, when it was important. What a wonderful example he set for you.
Yeah, no fear, very unapologetic of who he is. And so I tried to, some of those things I'm not as good at. And so I'm always continuing to working through those. And I tend to surround myself both professionally and personally, I think, many times with people who complement those things or who can help me grow in some of those areas where I have opportunities for growth too. So definitely not perfect, but definitely try to continue to grow as a leader.
I have a question about that. Do you find, even when your dad's not there, that you hear his voice, or you would ask yourself, what would my dad do in this situation? Do you ever do that?
I do, and I'm fortunate that he is still around, and he is, now I think, relationships with children change, right? From that time of, and I'm seeing this now with my own 16-year-olds too. It's like that beginning of friendship, as opposed to, what you're trying to teach them, guide them, and even coach them too. So he's definitely one of my best friends, and usually the first person that I'm talking to about something great that's happened or something not great that has happened to, and seeking his advice. So I definitely am fortunate that I still have that, and I do carry that with me every day.
That's amazing. I mean, that story is just incredible, especially in this day and age where I think there are so many people that are actually afraid to step up into leadership, especially in healthcare, because, a patient or a person who's laying on the sidewalk, you go to save their life, God forbid you break a rib, administering CPR, they can turn around and sue you. So there's so many people right now like that are kind of on that teeter-tottering fence, right? About do I follow my heart and help and pitch in, or do I not? Right? Do you ever come across a situation where you have someone, maybe you're mentoring them or wanting to encourage them, and they're kind of like, oh, it's this leadership isn't really for me. I never considered myself a leader. And how do you handle that?
That's a really great question, and I have run into that. And I think you have to remember that everybody's at their own journey, right? No one is on the same path as you. No one's on the same path as me. So I think it's remembering that phrase, like, just take it one step at a time, more and more runs through my head these days too. I'm definitely like a want it all right now type of person. I want to fix all the issues and I want to move it forward. And so I very recently have continued to step back and say, okay, let's take it one step at a time. And I think that's where, when you're coaching, even specifically on our team, we're focused on mentorship, specifically conversations on a monthly basis. We give everybody, a time block, and we just have conversations and we talk about, obviously we're setting goals for the company and, how their position connects to those goals. But sometimes you have to work through some of the personal things too. And so there's never an agenda. We're always just giving our team members an opportunity to come in and talk. And I have a very young, flourishing team that most of them are now in the we're going to have kids phase. So because I've moved past that a little bit, I think sometimes we even have conversations around like, how did you get your kids to sleep? Because, oh my gosh. And then how did you function on no sleep? So, I think you talked about, this is about building relationships too. And in order to get to that opportunity and coach people to wherever they may want to be in life, their focus may not be, I want to be the CEO tomorrow, but their focus is getting my kid to sleep at night, getting myself to function. And then, yes, once I can do those things, wherever I am in my career, this is what my next step is. It's taking it one step at a time mentality, I think breeds success.
Which is fascinating to me because you have what I call a high need for closure. You need to get to a result, but at the same time, to gear back and take it one step at a time because everyone is different. They have a different why and they have a different story. In fact, pre-interview, you were sharing this concept of, what was it, craft your own story kind of idea. So it sounds like that's what you're doing with your team, is you're helping them craft their individual stories within the bigger story of Ziebart, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We try to take it one step at a time, individualize, personalize, and just help people grow and feel. I think, we were talking about that idea of, communication and collaboration and connection. And I feel like if you try to master all three of those, oftentimes you'll see that opportunity. You'll see people engaged, and then they're excited, and then they're talking about what their next step is and what the brand's next step is from a marketing standpoint in my example. So I really feel like, thinking about those three things, how do you consistently collaborate, whether within a team or within a large brand, anywhere you go, are you communicating what you should be? If you're not, how do you do that better? But also celebrating too, big wins are great, but small wins are really great too, because the small wins lead to the bigger wins. And so celebrating when we have wins and opportunities, I think helps do that as well.
That's interesting. This week, I was coaching a middle manager, and she was telling me how someone on her team had come to her and said, how come we're always looking at ways to improve and we never stop to celebrate when we reach a goal? Now, would you say that that was a cultural thing? And what advice would you give to a middle manager who was in that situation?
I think definitely that is probably a cultural thing. It boils down to leaders of teams and how they lead. I would give them the, advice of talking to their leader, number one, which it sounds like, they will do or want to do. And just reminding, that leader what things were accomplished, how those things connect to a bigger picture, and simply ask. It's time. I'd love to celebrate that, whether it's, with our team, even in a moment. I mean, celebrations don't have to be big and boisterous, right? They can be as simple as, I know we're all using Teams and Slack, and we're either home, hybrid, and office. It doesn't matter what it is, but sometimes it's just a funny, hey, like, I'm acknowledging this person, or I'm acknowledging the whole team for a success of something. And, oftentimes we end up getting into funny gifts, and then we're, but that's what it's all about, right? Is staying connected. And it's very hard to celebrate and connect in this kind of newer world that we're in now, that I don't think everybody has figured out, but we all are trying to, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
So interesting how you said that middle manager should go to their manager, to go up, right? Like somebody's coming to you with something, and instead of just addressing it and leaving it right there, I think that was really wise that you said to go up, like send that message up the ladder.
Right.
Tell them.
And I think, sometimes and it's natural, right? You might be nervous to do that, or it may feel uncomfortable, but 9 out of 10, even 9.5, probably out of 10 times when you're doing that, you're sending a message to someone who just may simply not see that. Everyone's so focused and so busy these days on, opportunities for growth, that just sending that simple message, if you have the right leader, they're going to thank you for that. They're going to be gracious for you doing that, and excited to be able to support you in doing that.
Beautiful. Larisa, you are very active and now vice chair at the IFA's Women's Franchise Committee. Tell us what you guys are up to at the Franchise Committee.
We are always up to all the things, many things. We do believe are the hardest working committee at IFA, and we're very, very proud of that. That opportunity to connect women in franchising and help them build their careers, communication, all those things I said. Collaboration is at the heart of the Women's Franchise Committee too. Clubhouse, we're down to a once-a-month schedule, and we're really packing in some meaty information. In fact, I know this podcast will probably go out later, but we have one today, so you can check that out too, in terms of conversations and what's happening. We also have, I think we're almost up to 24 different local women's franchise network chapters across the United States. So they're taking, conversations and themes that are happening and bringing them down and creating connections in their local communities, which I think is just absolutely great. There's many chapters that are forming in states that we've never had them before. So I think that that's wonderful. And then we're also gearing up for the annual leadership conference. That is the premier kickoff event to the International Franchise Association's conference, which is in Arizona this year in February. And we're really excited about that. I can't give too much away because we haven't officially announced it yet, but what I can tell you is that we're taking a little bit of a different spin in some different aspects of how we're, introducing and connecting to women in franchising, and really highlighting a lot of new leaders that have not been on stages before. So we're very excited about that. We're highlighting some different opportunities where brands are specifically focusing on growing women leadership in franchising and growing women's opportunities to own franchises. So very excited about that too. Our case study, which I absolutely cannot tell you, obviously, which is always a highlight of the event, where we go ahead and do a little workshop. We break out into tables, and we give everybody this kind of case study without saying who it is. And then at the end, as tables work through maybe what their issue or problem was and how they would address it, then we announce who the case study is, and they come up on the stage and explain what they did to resolve the issues that they had. And it's always just an exciting reveal. It's a really amazing case study this year. It is a story that has not been highlighted, and I think maybe happens more often than we think in franchising, but I can't give any more away. But I'm really excited about that too. So it's going to be a phenomenal event. And then, we're just going from there. The team is meeting at the Advocacy Summit, happening here in a couple weeks in September, in Washington, D.C. So we all meet in person, and that's very exciting. And we're just excited to continue to have open dialogue around what's important to women and how we can support opportunities for education and growth, for women and men and everyone in franchising. I think what I love about the Women's Franchise Committee, and I've served on a couple other committees at IFA too, but what I love is it seems to be this very inspiring place that is willing to knock on the door of hard issues and talk about what those things are and how we can, one, open up them, two, educate through them, and then three, challenge them to tackle some of these issues.
Wow. Larisa, I'm very excited about the upcoming initiatives. You have me so curious with the story, the case study. And I know that you can't talk about the 2024 initiatives, but what are some of the hard topics you've had to deal with this past year?
I would say from a franchising standpoint, we've kind of learned through attending different events and just listening that there is an opportunity specifically on the franchisee side, where we're talking about the opportunity for growth for our franchise brands and almost unpacking and coming back to the basics, educating about financing, especially. There seems to be a disconnect there, and lack of education on that, financing options available to women in franchising. I recently went to the multi-unit show a couple months back, and it was my first time attending. I was very excited to attend. They put on a wonderful show over at Franchise Media Update. But I was sitting in the general session, and I'm like looking around, and I'm texting Robin Gagnon, our chair of the Women's Franchise Committee, and I'm like, Robin, there's like 10 women in this room. What is going on?
Yeah.
And so we started a dialogue around why is that? And she's just Robin is like my hero. So she's definitely one of my mentors. And she just started, talking about what she's seeing and, her concept, We Sell Restaurants, and where there's opportunities for growth and education. So, I think that the meeting of the committee in September, while we're always working through all these initiatives of the leadership conference and the women's franchise networks and Clubhouse, and we've got all these, and our podcast too, that we all, have going on, it's time to step back and use that meeting as a forum to really say, what do we all feel are those opportunities, and where can we lend some support and education in those places? So I'm really excited to finally to meet in person. We only do that twice a year, so it's exciting to do that.
So my brain is going two different directions here. Direction one is around this background you had as a dancer, and then your dad's wonderful mentorship and other experiences being mentored that turned you into this beautiful leader. But you also mentioned something about folks understanding the finances. I think data is important in general as a leader. What are your thoughts on leading by using data to do so?
I think that's important for every single leader, but I really think that's especially important for women. When we talk about fallacies or, sometimes thoughts around emotions, and where emotions play a positive part and where, they could be perceived as negative. Emotions aren't negative, number one. It's not negative to have an emotion, but there's a place for any leader to have a conversation where they're trying to show an opportunity. And I feel that data is really important in making connections to people's whys. Again, your customers' whys, right? If you're taking a servant leadership mindset and you focus on, again, my three customers every day are the team here at our franchise support center, our franchise owners, and then the millions of drivers that we serve. So understanding their why and understanding how to serve their why oftentimes starts with data. And specifically in franchising too, when we're talking to franchise owners about opportunities for growth and we're utilizing strategies, tactics, and programs to do that, we know our franchise owners' whys. I mean, many of our franchise owners were very interested in, their own business, interested in working on or working with cars. They have a love for cars a number of different ways. But we all know that everyone purchases a franchise, right? Because they want to see that return, and they want to see that return on that investment. So using the right data points to understand and make connections with their whys, again, that breeds success in what you're trying to accomplish.
It's kind of bringing the head and the heart together, because if we only lead from compassion and love and gut feel, and a good percentage of time that's accurate, but then if you have the data that supports it and gets to the heart of the matter, that this is my why, and my data is saying I'm not getting to my why the way I want to get it, now I can adjust my strategies as a franchisee, as a leader, whatever role I'm in, to get more of my why, right? So it's really a beautiful head and heart combination by using data, but at the same time coming from the emotional component, what you're calling the why, what drives somebody, what motivates someone. You've articulated it beautifully, and the importance of the data to get where we want to go, right?
I think so. It's that whole, qualitative, quantitative kind of mix, and you kind of have to have both, right? You can never just have one. So yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah.
I love that, because I'm thinking how a lot of times, like, just take a typical business owner. A lot of times they think that their product is for everyone and they can just put one message out there, when in fact, not only is their product not necessarily for everyone, but even among the people who their product is for, there are different, like what you're pointing out, there are different markets, different segments, different whys. And it's so critical to address each one, right? Because they're so separate. So if we can just get back for a minute to you as a leader, because I heard you say something in passing about how when you were on the dance team, you became the captain. And, you had your dad, he was a great mentor, but it just sounds like anything that you ever stepped into, you really rose through the ranks of that leadership. And it's great to have these external forces shaping our lives and setting a good example for us. However, there's also that, I don't know if you want to call it an internal drive or something about you that makes you want to make people better, make things better, that make you want to step up, make a difference, make an impact, step up into leadership. What do you think that internal drive is?
I think it definitely has to do with the people around you and the experiences that you've had. I would be remiss if I didn't share two other stories really quickly, as we were just talking through this and you brought up the dance background too. One, I have an interesting stat for you as well. I can't tell you how many people I run into from specifically a marketing standpoint and even into a leadership role who danced and who danced competitively. I can name 5 people on the Women's Franchise Committee right now who actually still teach dance, competitively dance. And it's just this, like, at some point when I have a minute, I really want to dive into that and understand what that connection is. Why are there so many people who have this, dance background in some way that end up in marketing and or even leadership roles too? Countless people I know who end up doing that. It's very interesting to me, and I hope maybe one day to like write a blog about it or something, because I'm just so fascinated by it. That'll probably be when my kids graduate high school when we have a little bit more time. But I'm very excited about that. But nonetheless, going back to your question, I also had another very strong mentor during my childhood, and that was my dance teacher. She owns a performing arts center. At one point, she owned two. That this is kind of crazy for like just a little dance studio that turned super big, but each studio grossed over $1.5 million. She was the largest performing arts center in Michigan, nationally ranked #1 for several years. I was on a TV show one time. She had kids, if you remember, Star Search, that were on that too. It's just, yeah, and now her students are being asked to audition for American Idol. It's just, she just breeds success too. And I looked toward her. She was probably one of my very first female mentors as well. I saw her, take a small business and create something amazing and big. And it all came from her passion for dance too. So it's just interesting to see, she supported me. She gave me opportunities to grow as a leader, from an assistant dance teacher in high school. That was my first job, to teaching throughout, and even teaching after college. And that was my first job in marketing, as her coordinator for a few years. So, I think watching her as a small business owner also guided me. But those principles, competitive dance is hard. Okay. If anybody says that dance is not a sport, we can have a long conversation about why it is. I trained every day after school from 3 to 9:30, and 12 hours Saturday and Sunday each. So I was, training more than any football player, than anyone else. And that you had to be able to balance school and balance life and work really hard, because we wanted to keep that #1 position in the United States. And we did for several years. So I believe sports, dance, all of those things are so important for children as they're growing up. If you have that opportunity to do that, it really just teaches so many other lessons. But the other part of your question, really quickly, on mentorship too, I also took a different route. I'm always about challenging myself in experiences that I've never had. And so when I went to college, I went to Adrian College. It's a very small liberal arts college here in Michigan. Population 1,200 total of students. It's not big. It's probably bigger now, but that's what it was when I went. But I challenged myself to, as an only child, I didn't have that opportunity to grow up with siblings in the household. And I'm like, okay, I should probably, see what this is all about. And I challenged myself to join a sorority. And sorority life was way different than, Alabama, Bama, TikTok rush at this point, although kudos to them for what they're trying to do. But at my school, it was really all about fitting into the right group of people. And I instantly fit in with the sorority I was in, who gave me my first leadership roles, who someone said to me outside of my world of dance and my family, you know what, we see these leadership qualities in you. We want to give you a leadership role, and we want to help you succeed and grow. And that's what happened with that experience. So I challenge specifically women, as we look at opportunities, whether you're about to go to college, you're in college, you're out of college, or wherever the case may be, if you don't have a solid foundation of women around you to guide you and support you and show you sometimes what you don't even know by looking in the mirror yourself, that is crucial in your success.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Love this. We had Allie Krause, who I'm sure you know, on the show. And you two are two peas in a pod, because she brought up some similar things of how dance and the self-discipline around that, and that team and getting to a certain outcome and competition really has turned you into a leader. And so it really would be interesting, as a behavioral scientist, I'm like, let's look into this to see how many dancers.
I would love to.
Wouldn't it be fun? These competitive dancers, and how they turn out to be, business leaders, or just leaders in the world in general. Girls, I hate to do this, because we're just now getting in a groove here, and I want to go, and I want to go, and I want to go with you, Larisa. but I do have to be out by the top of the hour. So I want to make sure that people are able to get hold of you, Larisa. How would they do that, and how can they learn more about the Ziebart opportunity?
Yep, you can absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a super duper user. I love meeting new connections. You can find us on Ziebart.com. It's Ziebart.com, and learn more about the services that we provide.
Thank you so much, Larisa, for your time. Tracy, I'm going to punt it over to you for a 30-second overview or your aha moment.
So you've got me so inspired. Half of me, Larisa, wants to turn back time and apply everything that I've learned from you today about leadership to me as a 20-year-old. And the other half of me wants to pay it forward. So thank you for inspiring me on, leadership, mentorship. Just, I love the work that you're doing, because I think we as women and people in general need that so much. And I'm looking forward to having you back and talking more about this mentorship. Yeah.
Me too.
I would love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Larisa. And thank you to those that are listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forge. Make sure to share this video with your friends, and of course, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next week on another episode.